today came the long-awaited National Climate Pledge from China. It's important because it's the collection of all these pledges which actually tells us how close we're coming to meeting our climate targets. Now, every country has to submit them, but China's is really crucial because it's the biggest emitter. Like you said, it's responsible for 27% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Now, China already has targets to peak its emissions by 2030 and to be carbon neutral by 2060. Today we learned that it's going to bring those forward a little bit, but experts say that's simply not enough. Most crucially, there is no new announcements on domestic coal use in power. That's something that the COP UK presidency has been pushing for in particular. The bottom line is that this was really a moment for China to wrest its mantle as a global climate leader, and it looks like that didn't actually happen.
Just 3 days, isn't it, before COP? Where does that leave us?
Well, not in the place that many people would have liked to see us. Let's remember, our big aim is to limit global warming by 1.5 degrees. The UN said this week that we're headed for 2.7. The announcement from China today doesn't look to have changed that very much. One expert I heard from said that what we're still seeing from big economies is plans for better plans in the future. And the science says that time is long gone.
OK, Simon Roach, thank you very much. Well, it's the biggest event the UK has hosted since the 2012 Olympics. Around 100,000 protesters, 30,000 delegates and 120 world leaders will soon descend on this city for the climate summit. There are already warnings of severe disruption. There's never been a bigger police operation mounted in Scotland. And while shops and restaurants are hoping for a boost in trade, Glasgow's residents have been urged to open up their homes to thousands heading this way with nowhere to stay.
This is the moment, we're told, to save the planet, and this is the place to do it. 120 world leaders are heading to Glasgow's newly fortified riverside for a summit on a scale not seen before in the UK. Preparations are in overdrive. Graffiti painted over pedestrian crossings, scrubbed clean. Tens of thousands of delegates from around the world are rolling in alongside protesters and activists into a city with some way to go on its own green journey. Glasgow has, though, been spared the embarrassment of a train strike crippling COP26 after a last-minute deal with the RMT union. But bin workers are striking during the summit over pay and conditions, as the council says it's clamping down on problem fly tipping across the city. But on a more upbeat note,
I think it's going to be amazing for the city.
Have yourself some bobble hat wearing enthusiasm from some of the legion of COP26 volunteers.
A lot of big names coming over, so it really is going to put Glasgow on the map worldwide, you know.
What are you looking forward to seeing?
Air Force One.
Biden.
There is, though, an accommodation squeeze, with cruise ships brought in to provide thousands of extra beds and reports of private landlords charging eye-watering rates. One campaign group says 3,000 people from some of the world's poorest countries still have nowhere to stay.
The biggest challenge.
Including Jonathan, who runs an environmental charity in rural Uganda.
Do you feel a bit excluded, left out of this conference?
Not yet, because 4 days to go, and I believe that anything can happen anytime. Maybe a good Samaritan can say, please come and stay here.
An unofficial host network has indeed sprung up, and delegates are making do.
They know that they're in a king-size bed, so I'm hoping they're happy with it. I'm not sure whether they've met or not.
Two strangers from Jamaica and the Cayman Islands will share this bed in Judith's flat, as Glasgow folk are offering up whatever space they have.
But it's the poor people and the younger people that need their voices heard. They're the ones that are going to suffer more than us from climate change.
The presidents of Russia and China less keen on Glasgow. They're not showing up, and US President Biden has climate troubles at home. Does that make a good outcome less likely?
Well, this conference is going to be tricky because what it needs to do is to keep the world on a path to 1.5 degrees centigrade of warming. Glasgow's got to keep that global coalition together. So far, it looks like that will hold, but of course there are some key figures not coming to Glasgow. which is a great shame, I think. So it could have been a moment for real global leadership.
Global leadership, there's even a song about it, especially for COP26 by the artist Gerard Burns. Along with new oil paintings inspired by the brutal honesty of these school kids from Glasgow's East End.
Like the world's heating up because of all of the carbon dioxide and everything that's getting put into the atmosphere, and it's killing animals and it's causing more natural disasters to happen all around the world.
What do you think the grown-ups, all the big leaders in the world, are doing about it?
They're not really doing anything. They're usually being a bit lazy because no one's really doing anything about it.
And what is your message then as 9 and 10-year-olds to all the important people who are going to be arriving in Glasgow next week?
I think a great message would be is to say that if you're going to say that you do it, then you should really do it.
It's Glasgow's moment to perform. It's the planet's chance to save itself, and it's almost upon us.
The whole world is waiting for you to decide.
Well, earlier I spoke to Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, and I asked her whether the problems faced by President Biden would make global progress on the climate more difficult.
Well, I really hope there is a good global outcome to COP, but I don't think anybody should be under any illusion that that is going to be difficult to achieve. President Biden, like many leaders in countries across the world, finds this challenging. We all do, because it's not easy, but every leader has an obligation and a responsibility to step up. Big countries like the United States are crucial to this, but smaller countries like Scotland have a big responsibility as well.
President Biden wanted that domestic climate deal in his back pocket, signed and sealed, didn't he, by the time he landed in Glasgow? It doesn't look like he'll have it. Is it a setback?
Look, I think it would have been better had the infrastructure bill and that package that is currently before Congress been agreed before COP. I'm obviously not in a position to comment on the intricate detail of the negotiations that are underway in the United States. You know, obviously the G20 is about to meet in the days leading up to COP, so there's still an opportunity there for leaders there to step up, to increase the scale of the ambition. There is a mountain to climb in Glasgow over the next 2 weeks, but the scale of responsibility here is massive. And leaders of my generation, if we fail this challenge, then we're not going to be able to look at the next generation squarely in the eye. It's that simple and that important.
Well, you say Scotland is leading by example, but you haven't delivered your promise of 4 low-emission zones by 2020. You haven't delivered your promise of a publicly owned renewable energy company, and you've missed your own emissions reductions targets in each of the last 3 years. Now, we've been speaking to school children in Glasgow who are dismayed that leaders keep breaking their promises. What would you say to them?
On public energy company, on the low emission zones, these were things, the plans for which were affected because of the COVID pandemic, and obviously we're working to get things like low emission zones back on track. On the overall targets for Scotland, yes, we have not met the targets in the last 3 years, and we are legally obliged, therefore, to publish catch-up plans and overperform in years to come. But it's really important in recognising that we also see it in context. Scotland has decarbonised faster in recent years than any G20 country.
You've called on world leaders to step up at Glasgow, not to fudge it, but people will come here and learn that there are plans for a new oil field off the coast of Shetland, and you haven't said yet whether you're for or against it. So, in the spirit of not fudging it, which is it?
I actually have said it should not go ahead unless it passes a very robust climate assessment. It has a licence, it's had a licence for 20 years, so that can't be just magicked away. But I have said it should not go ahead unless it can pass a robust climate assessment, which right now there is no plans to do. I don't have the power to insist on that myself because it is a UK government responsibility, but I've made that abundantly clear to Boris Johnson.
There's going to be official protests here, and there's going to be unofficial protests, aren't there? And Extinction Rebellion are promising high-impact disruption here in Glasgow. Now, say if they close roads and motorways or what have you, would you support that as a legitimate form of protest?
But I think that people have a right to protest, they have a right to demonstrate, that is a feature of a democracy. But of course, people, I think, also have a responsibility to behave within the law and not to unreasonably disrupt the lives of people going about their daily business. Glasgow and the people of Glasgow are hosting this conference, will suffer because of the conference a degree of disruption, and I've said earlier today, I hope protesters will take that into account.